Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning. While I think of something to say. Okay, right. Where did we leave yesterday? That was quite a chunky video we did yesterday in episode 4. So we're on to episode 5 now. So to recap on what we were talking about, we produced this list of questions that we would want to ask before we take work into the portfolio. And the reason why we're asking these questions is to determine the level of risk and the level of value associated with a piece of work. Now, I think it's worth caveating at this point in time that this is a first pass, and we're looking at it's a first pass at determining the risk and the value. But it's subject to definite change and it most probably needs fleshing out a lot more. But the reason why we're asking these questions up front is to determine the relative risk and the relative value when compared to other things that we could potentially be bringing into the portfolio. So that's really, really important now. It's what we'll end up with at the end of this is a blob in a matrix somewhere. Now, where the blob is in that matrix bears no reflection of kind of how valuable that is. But it's what we're interested in is its relative position to something else. So just going back to this chart here that we put together yesterday, where we've got value on the x-axis and risk on the y, something that's a high value item but low risk would be more favorable than a low value high risk item. So in terms of where it sits relatively to each other, we're more likely to investigate this as something we would want to pull into the portfolio as opposed to this. But we might not want to give it weeks and weeks and weeks of work to determine these, to the absolute accuracy of the risk and the value that it delivers. Could be a lot to get to that point. Could be, and most probably will be, a lot of work. So do we want to go to all of that work to figure out how valuable something is, when we could do a first pass and answer some very general questions against these items that we're potentially bringing into the portfolio that enable us to do this analysis of demands against each other, potential projects, concepts. And when we look at the relative scoring, we're able to say, okay, these look like items that have got value, that are low risk, and these are things that we should be pulling into the portfolio. Whereas these might be high risk, they might be mandatory, and we have to pull them in anyway. But if they're non-mandatory, it enables us to ask questions of, are these the right things to be pulling into the portfolio when there are other things that can deliver value? So that caveat, so understanding that caveat and understanding that we will revisit some of these depending on the size of them. Like, we will revisit the value and the risk, that depending on the level of change governance that we've got. So if they were to be a fully a full, say, project under the full framework of Prince 2, let's say, there will be different stages in which there would be different approval processes in which things would either cut it and they would make it through, or there will be layers of governance that will stop us moving forward with a certain thing if the investment doesn't match the value. So there will be other opportunities to either to put a stop to something or for it to continue, depending on the size of it. But again, this is just a first pass to let things initially through the gate and actually get them into the visibility of the portfolio, so we can start to process them under the governance of the portfolio. So let's go. Let's have a look at. Sorry, yeah. These are some of the questions that we put together yesterday, and what I've done, I've just transferred them into a table. And the next step that we were going to do was to put a response against, like a standard response against each of these questions. And the standard response, I say standard, each question will have its own type of response, but they'll be standardized in that one response will give a low rating, one a medium, and one a high. And I'll get into what I mean by that in a second. So there'll be a low, a medium, and a high. And we want a response. We want a response for each one of these questions. But there's another dimension to this as well. So going back to our value and our risk matrix here, we want to determine if something's a low, medium, or high risk, but we want to determine if something's a low, medium, or high in terms of its value. So these questions are either going to be risk related or value related. And I've put a column on here, which is the type. So we can put in here whether it's a value related question or a risk related question. If it's a risk related question, the responses that we give here will score the item against the relative risk. So let's say this first one, let's start to work through it. Is the concept aligned to a strategic objective? That would be a value related question, because it adds value if it's contributing towards a strategic objective. Now a high response on this would be that it adds a lot of value. So a low response would be that it adds, well, little to no value in terms of, is it aligned to the strategic objective? So we could make these answers fairly simple. So is it aligned? Is the concept aligned to a strategic objective? A response in the low end on this would just be no. So it bears no relevance to any strategic objectives within the organization. The high response would be a yes. And And actually, a medium response would be yes, but the high response could be yes. It's a critical pillar to delivering on a objective. And the medium one could be that it's a contributor. Let's try and shorten this down. Yes, critical pillar. Critical pillar to deliver on an objective. And the medium one could be that it's a contributor. So it contributes, but it's not fundamental. Okay, then. So our responses: the low response is that it doesn't align to a strategic objective. The medium response is that it's a contributor, but not fundamental. Contributes to an objective. And the high response, so high value, is that it's a critical pillar to the delivery of an objective. So hopefully you see where we're going with this now. I'm going to have to make this font smaller. We're going to go way off the bottom here. We'll think about formatting afterwards. So we're going to go through each of these questions now. And we're going to assign, is it a value related question or is it a risk related question? Okay. But before we do, let's just review the questions that we've got in here, because I think we're missing something. I'm very sure we're missing something around time. So I've broken it up into 3 sections. You've got business value. So the question, I'll just rattle through the questions. So we've got business value. Is the concept aligned with a strategic objective? Does this concept positively affect a key performance indicator? Does this concept generate revenue? Or not so, or avoid spending? That could probably be worded better, but I think you get the gist. It either generates or avoids operating costs, or yeah, let's leave it at that for the moment. Question mark. Is this concept attached to a legal or regulatory change? Okay. Is this concept related to employee or public safety? Okay. So those are the ones I've got against business value. I think we've covered everything off there. Does it affect a strategic objective? By implementing it, does it affect a key performance indicator? And I believe that's different to the strategic objective. Like, you can have something affect a key performance indicator, but it not be aligned to a strategic objective, and vice versa. But I think that would be a really interesting conversation to have if I was in a room with some senior stakeholders and they said to me that this is aligned to a strategic objective. but it doesn't affect a key performance indicator, then something's gone wrong somewhere. Like we're missing, we're something's been missed. Like, how is something so important that it's a strategic objective, but we're not measuring it? And maybe this is the point of the piece of work that we want to bring into the portfolio, that we want to introduce a performance indicator, a new performance indicator, and that'll be a fun one. And then you got vice versa as well. So, and let's be very clear as well right now that a key performance indicator is what it says it is. It's key. That I hear so much that like all performance indicators are like, they're all key performance indicators. Like it's okay to have a hierarchy of performance indicators. Stuff, not everything needs to be key. well, yeah. And I suppose that's a bit of is it a subjective argument? I just find that, okay, me ranting there, that everything's a key performance indicator. Actually, no, not all the time. I have heard some people of late refer to some things as just performance indicators, which was quite refreshing. So a key performance indicators should sit at the top, further up the hierarchy. Okay. Right. Now we're on to data engineering. Is the data currently available in our data warehouse? That might need rewording. Because data warehouse is just like one specific part. But we'll leave it as it is for the moment. I'm not going to get too bogged down on wording right now. Do we have any data quality concerns? Should GDPR or PII be considered? What is the volume of information required to maintain the ask? Yeah, that question. What is the volume of information required to maintain the ask? Yeah, so these are tricky engineering questions. What you want to try and get your head around is, are we pulling in 100,000? Do we need to pull in 100,000? Records of data every day? Are we pulling in millions of records of data every day? Are we pulling in hundreds of millions of data of rows of information every second or something like that? And then if we are, like, what's the cardinality though of the, how complicated is the information? So the volume of information required to maintain the ask, I suppose you could, it's the volume, the complexity, but you will know it when one thing's bigger than the other. Like if something feels big and intimidating, that's what we're trying to get out right now. Is it big and intimidating, or is it relatively simple? And depending on which engineer you ask, you might get different answers to that question. But you're still trying. This is just to determine like the difference between two different asks. So I think it's a relevant question. It probably needs some refinement. And how many source system connections are required? I'm not a big fan of that question. But again, it's like, if you're having to connect to 10 different databases, that's more complicated than having to connect to one. So we'll leave it in. Okay, so the last section on product management. Who are the consumers of the information? So who's the audience? That'll be an interesting one to answer, because I think it's and then the next question is, what is the volume of consumers? Who are the consumers? What is the volume? Okay, we'll come back to those in a sec. What frequency will the customers require this information? What type of data product is required? Yeah, that okay. We'll come back to that in a second. I know what I mean by that, and the answers will flesh that out. And how complex is the route to adoption? And this is a training question, and I think it's a very relevant one, because if people don't adopt it, then the whole thing's been a waste of time. And if it's a really complicated thing to adopt, then we need to account for it right up front. Because I've seen many products fail. They're really good, like really good products, but they just weren't adopted by the business for one reason or another. And they just, they were implemented. They got no views, no clicks, and then that was it. That was the end of that. So there has to be a plan for adoption, and I suppose this is like an ongoing maintenance. But let's not get too far down that rabbit hole of adoption. And then I think that there should be a time question in here as well. Where does the time question? So does it come into business value? I think it comes into business value. Maybe business value is the wrong title, actually. So it's more like business. I don't think business requirements the right term, but let's roll with that for the moment. And let's put a row in there. When does this ask need to be fulfilled? Fulfilled. Okay, let's just dive into this question. So this is a risk-related question. So the response, I would say, like a low-risk response would be that there's no fixed delivery date. A high response is, like a high risk response is that there's a fixed delivery date. And then a medium one would be that there's a an expected delivery date with flexibility. Something like that. So the low response would be that there's no fixed delivery date. A medium is that there's an expected delivery date with flexibility. And a high risk response would be that there's a fixed delivery date. Okay. I think we're getting somewhere now. Ooh, and it fits on a page as well. Well, it might not fit if we keep using double lines on some of these responses. And let's go for, let's put in the types of questions down here first. Does the concept positively affect a key performance indicator? That's a value related question. Does the concept generate revenue? That's a value related question. Is the concept attached to legal or regulatory change? I would say that's a risk related question. And is it a concept related to employee or public safety? That's a risk related question. Is the data currently available in the data warehouse? Is a risk. Are the data quality concerns? It's a risk related question. Risk. I think all the rest of these are going to be risk now. And pardon me. What is the volume of information required? Yeah, these are all going to be risk now. How many source systems? Who are the consumers? What's the volume of the consumers? The frequency. What type of data product is required? And how complex is the route to adoption? Yeah, I think that those, so let's just colour these in. I think that, I do like my colour palette, but it's very limited if I want to have anything that's a bit different. Let's go for these value ones. Can be like a dark colour, and then these risk ones can be should go for a blue. Yeah, let's go for a blue, like a very light blue. I do love this colour palette. I'm really, really enjoying this colour palette. Yeah, that works. That's nice. Okay. Let's center align all these. Okay, then does the concept positively affect a key performance indicator? No. Ooh, we could put no's against these. These no's as well. Is the concept related to employee or public safety? No. So, is the concept related to employee or public safety? Yes. Mitigates against risk of loss of life. Or serious injury. Can you tell that I don't know how to spell? So medium response on the employee and public safety one, yes. Mitigates. Mitigates against risk of loss of life or serious serious injury. So what's the medium one on this? is the medium one on this? So I don't know. We're gonna have to revisit this because I don't just want to stall. So this is like the reason why I'm stalling on this is it's like something. There'll be something around light injury or something like that. I'm gonna have to revisit this one. Drawing a blank. Okay. Does this concept positively affect a key performance indicator? No. Yes. Has a significant impact. Something like that. So yes, if a high value response is that it has a significant impact. A medium response would be that yes, it does impact on a performance indicator, but it has a minor impact. And I guess we could define terms there, like what is minor and what is significant. You might need some kind of guidance that sits alongside this, because one person's minor could be the other person's significant. So, but again, let's not get too bogged down in defining our terms right this second. Does the concept generate revenue? I think we can have the same responses here. Let's get this to fit on one line. Significant impact. Has minor impact, has a significant impact. Is the concept related to legal or regulatory change? So then, for this one, yes. Risk of major non-compliance. And then this one could be that it's a minor non-compliance. Okay, where we got to? So right, we filled out the top section. Yeah, nice. Okay, then let's. Whoa! I'm just gonna make the font a little. God, we can't go much smaller than this. I'm gonna run out of space. Oh no! Oh dear. But we will. I really need to get these down to one row, don't I? Okay. Right, let's carry on. Is the data currently available in our data warehouse? Right. So the high risk response is that it's not available. So a no. Yes, all data items available. I suppose the medium response is some items of data available. Yeah. So it's either all there, some of it's there, or none of it's there. Do we have any data quality concerns? Yes. Known issues in the high risk pot. No concerns in the low pot. And then I suppose we don't know. Is the kind of medium response there. Don't know, untested. Yeah, that's the medium response. There are either no concerns, there are known concerns, no concerns, or known concerns in the high pot, and we don't know in the middle. Should GDPR be considered? So the low response is no, the high response is yes. Highly sensitive. Oh no. What happened? Are we back? I pressed sleep on my button. Yeah, I think we're back. Okay. I pressed sleep on my keyboard, which I didn't mean to. Right. Where we at? Should GDPR PII be considered? No. So if it's a yes, highly sensitive data. Oh, my cat's just stood up and I can't see the screen. Excuse me, pussycats. You're looking very regal standing there, but I can't see the screen. Aha, right, there we go. Highly sensitive data. So there is, so the medium response is so I don't know too much about GDPR law, but I'm guessing that there's different layers of like sensitivity. Low risk. I'm just going to put low risk data. Highly sensitive data and low risk data will be required. What is the volume of information required to maintain the ask? Low volume, low complexity. Low volume, low complexity. What is the volume of information required to maintain the ask? Low volume. Do we need a separate question on complexity? I guess this is just the low, medium, and high. But if it's really complex information, no, let's just leave it at that for the moment. How many source systems are required? So, I don't know. I don't really like this question, but let's just say 1, 2 to 5. Over 5. We're going to have to refine these questions, I think. Like that question might be very specific to the company that you're at. So if we've got 30 different systems that we're using to maintain the business, we might have a threshold higher. So we might say, right, there's over 10 systems that need to be considered to fulfill this ask. Whereas if you've only got 3, well, we might just score this out of 1, 2, and 3. So again, going back to the relative scoring, so it's what kind of, what fits with specifically with your business, I suppose. Okay. And then the final section, who are the customers? Now, there's 2 different dimensions to this. No, there's not 2 different dimensions, but I'm not sure about how this will fit into a high, medium, and low, because I think that it's not necessarily the level of consumers, but maybe it's the groups. So it might be, well, a low risk would be 1 tier of people, which might be CEOs. Sorry, it might be the senior leadership team. It might be the operators, but it's not both. And then we kind of go up from there, 3 or more. So a high risk item would be that we're serving this to 3 or more audience, 3 or more different audiences. So it might be, well, operators, managers, and senior leaders. And that might be how we determine this. We just have those 3 categories: manager, senior leaders, the senior leadership team, the managers, and the operators. What's the volume of the consumers? Again, might be relevant to your organization, but let's say, I think with Big House that we were looking at, so it would be, I think it had 10,000 employees. So the most high risk would be 10,000 employees, and low risk would be kind of less than 100. And, well, if we've got 10,000 employees and we want to serve all 10,000, then it might be, well, we want to have capacity to serve at least 10,000 or more. And then so the bottom tier might be like less than 1,000, and then the second tier would be greater than 1,000 and less than 10,000. Okay. What frequency will the consumers require this information? What frequency will consumers require updates? So this is like how, it's a bit of an engineering ask actually, but we'll leave it in the product section. How frequently do they want it? So so a high risk kind of response here would be multiple points per day. Multiple Low risk would be weekly, monthly, or annual. And the medium risk would be daily. Something like that. Not something like that, exactly like that. What type of data product is required? Right, yes. So, what type of data product is required? There's a good question. So, it could be that the business just needs raw data. It could be that they require analysis. So they want answers to questions. Or the in-between is that they want to be able to ask questions of data. They want to be able to ask questions of data and do their own analysis. Conduct own analysis. And I think that's a really interesting one, because to answer the questions in a product is far more complicated. Is far more complicated than just surfacing information, in my opinion. Because there's many ways you could cut, a piece of information. Ask questions of data, conduct own analysis, your own analysis. So provide analysis answers to questions. Oof, we're almost done, but we're almost off the bottom. Let's just move this up a sec so we can see it. How complex is the route to adoption? Low complexity. Easy to train. Easy to train. Low complexity, easy to train. Easy to train. What am I doing? Medium complexity. Medium to train. High complexity. Hard to train. So yeah, low complexity, medium complexity, hard complexity. So important. We get this wrong, no one's going to use the report or the product or whatever it is we're building. Okay, so we've got a bit of a problem with the fact we can't get it to fit on the page. But that aside, that's looking pretty nifty, I would say, because we've got all of for our intake of work into the portfolio, we have a lot of questions that enable us to determine the relative value and we have a series of questions that determines that we can score our value, and we can score our risk, that will drive a score for our value and our risk. And we can ask these questions of all of the demands as they come in. And this is going to enable us to do this relative comparison. Yeah, I think we've done pretty well there, other than the fact it doesn't fit on the page. But we can fix that. We can fix that. So we'll leave it there. That was pretty awesome. I've got to go and take my car to the garage now, and I think that it stopped raining, so that's good because I'm going to cycle back. So I'm going to go and do that now. Have a great day. I'll speak to you soon. Bye bye.